Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I know when you get up close to that cocktail hour, especially in Vegas, the crowd can get a little thinner. So thanks for sticking it out and joining us today. My name is Jim Mullen. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer at the National Motor Freight Traffic Association. And I'm going to be moderating the panel, and I'll have the panelists introduce themselves this time. Go ahead, Don.
My name is Donald Hester. I'm the Cybersecurity Advisor for the San Francisco Bay Area region. I work for the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, which is a part of the Department of Homeland Security. That's a really long thing. Been in cybersecurity for over 25 years.
My name is Steve Hankel. I'm the Vice President of IT for Johanson Transportation Service. We're a 3PL based out of Fresno.
Hi, my name is Joe Orr. I'm the COO at NMFTA. I've been in the trucking industry and the technology industry going on 25 years.
Excellent. And a reminder, if you have questions, you can, on the CR code, send it up and show up on our screen, and I'll get to them if time permits. So please shoot any questions if you would like. We'll start off with a pretty general question. Cybersecurity is not just a technical issue, it's a people issue as well. People like me clicking on the wrong links on emails I'm not supposed to be clicking on. Obviously, it's a process and a knowledge, all goes into threats to cybersecurity. So can you kind of give us your thoughts on what organizations can do proactively to protect themselves from cybersecurity threats? Why don't we go ahead and I think we're starting with you, Don.
Sure. So cybersecurity, for a long time, I was an auditor before I came to the federal government, and I would often go in and say, hey, I'm here to talk to you about IT security, and they'd say, oh, IT's down the hall, and I'd be like, no, you don't understand. IT governance is about what you do to IT, right? Like, how do you govern it? How do you make sure that it's doing what it's supposed to do? At the end of the day, you want to make sure that your technology brings value to the organization and that you're mitigating risks, not introducing new risks, right? And so part of what we need to look at, and we have to change our thoughts on cybersecurity as being an IT problem and look at it as an enterprise problem. At the end of the day, cyber risk is enterprise risk, right? So imagine, I don't know, everybody in here, I don't know what you all work for, but imagine if you have an automated system in your warehouse, one of the fancy robots that are out there that are moving things around. What happens when someone hacks into that and installs ransomware on it and locks all those systems out, and now your warehouse is dead in the water? What do? Right? That's a business problem. That's not an IT problem, right? And so this is one of our biggest messages that we want everybody to understand is that this is really enterprise risk at the end of the day. And all your other enterprise risks that you have to consider, this should be a part of that. And with supply chain being a part of the critical infrastructure, it's really important because a number of other organizations are dependent on that supply chain. We saw how bad of an incident we had with COVID, right? When the supply chain kind of got stopped. We couldn't get masks, right? So it's very vital important that our logistics side of things are secure, right? From our point of view, we want to make sure that you guys can still move trucks, right? At the end of the day, and move things in the warehouse, whatever it needs to be. So for us, it's very much an enterprise risk.
An important part of that is business continuity too. You want to start out by identifying all of your critical business processes in your company and categorizing those, figuring out when you need them, your recovery time objective when you need them, and also your recovery point, your data. Data is a key thing, so you have to include that in there as well. Vendor is a big thing. So what you do when you look at all your business processes, figure out what your dependencies are. A lot of people know the technology. They know they need this application for payroll. They need this application for tracking and tracing. But what about the vendors you're using, and where are they going to be, and are they ready in case of a cyber attack?
Yeah, and to me, it's communication and awareness. The trucking industry is always amazed me, and the supply chain industry has always amazed me in that they're really open with communication. They're always talking with each other, even if they're competition, and hey, how can we better? But with cybersecurity, it's not been that way. It's always been the thing that they haven't really talked about. And so, really what we want to do is we want to get that communication out there. And we want to talk about, okay, what are you finding? What are your best practices? And then also communication. And that communication is across the organization. So it's not just with the back office staff, but it's education with the drivers. It's also education, like you said, with your vendors. It was 13 years ago, something like 2013, when Target was hacked, and they were hacked through an AC vendor. And, when you look at your vendors and you partner with your vendors, you got to look at who you're bringing in, because you're only as strong as your weakest link. And so you have to think about things like that so you can have a rock solid network, you can have a rock solid organization, but you have to train your people, you have to communicate with your people, but you also have to really look at your vendors and also use best practices.
Great. And this will be an interesting question since we kind of have a wide perspective on the panel. What do you think are the biggest cybersecurity risks or threats in the supply chain today? Why don't we start with you, Joe?
The biggest thing right now is the lookalike domains. And it's people clicking on those lookalike domains and hijacking those. And so we started to see that in the end of 2023, and we've also seen that at the beginning of 2024. And we saw it most recently with some of the load boards. Somebody sent a lookalike domain to one of the load boards, and a user actually clicked on it, entered their credentials, and sent the load information on. And it ended up being a lookalike domain that had they had signed up the load, and that load got hijacked, and the load wasn't paid for. And here it was a Russian domain that the load board went through. And so, this was a user, that had been through training. So to me, the biggest thing is that those lookalike domains. This one was very, very close to the domain. And as we get more technical and more digital, the bad guys get smarter and smarter. So to me, the biggest thing is the lookalike domains.
Steve?
Yeah, we actually had that. We've had that happen several times where we'll have someone call accounting and just to confirm that, so I'm supposed to send the payments here now? We're like, no. You're not supposed to keep. Why do you say that? Well, because your accounting person just emailed me. So we get the email and it's like they're maybe using a Cyrillic L or some other character or an I, capital I instead of an L, something like that. And in all the cases that we've run into where they're spoofing our domain, we've been able to shut down the domain, right away. You can do a report the fraud through you can find out, do a who is on Google even for the domain that they're using, and you can go through the fraud process and get it shut down pretty quickly, and that's what we did. But I would say user education is probably the number one thing as well. We have, what we did we started probably 3 or 4 years ago, was constantly doing phishing drills, sending fake emails to our employees. And then in Office 365, they actually have it built in where you can do these campaigns. And it'll tell you all the people that read the email, all the people that deleted the email, how many people actually clicked on it. And what we do is if someone reports it, we'll give them a Starbucks card. And if someone actually clicks on it, then we'll have a different conversation. It's like, okay, this is why this wasn't a real email. We did actually in the past also have someone go and get a bunch of Amazon cards because they thought that they were getting an email from our president. So we also show them to hover over the name, and if it's XXX at xxx598887@gmail.com, probably not our president.
So great examples. I love it. Social engineering is probably the #1 attack vector for threat actors. right? Getting into your organizations. We have to start looking at the threats related to that as well. In the news recently, not recently, maybe a year or so ago, where someone actually used what we call a deep fake. They used AI to clone the voice of the CEO of the company and then have the person call the accounting department to verify the funds transfer, right? And of course, the voice over the phone sounded just like the CEO. So this is an example of where threat actors are using AI, deepfake technology, to circumvent certain controls, right? Because you may have got the email that said do the wire transfer, but then when the CEO apparently calls and tells you to go ahead and do it, what staff member is going to say no? Right? So those are the other types of things. So you have to augment social engineering and understand that they're going to start using these new technologies, AI. You go out in the vendor area, a lot of vendors are talking about how they're using AI. Threat actors are now using AI. So that's a huge threat that we have to look at. The new technology, anytime it's a new technology, it can be used for good, it can be used for bad, right? And so threat actors are going to start doing that. We have to start changing the way we look at it. We may need to leverage AI to protect ourselves, to monitor our networks, to monitor everything, to look for those threat actors. Another thing that's been in the news, and maybe you guys missed it because you were going to fly out here to this wonderful place and enjoy this conference. But last week, the FBI director was speaking to Congress, and he was talking about one of the largest threats that we have, and that's nation states. This is a big threat because they have the expertise to leverage an attack that's not just, and really it's not like it's monetarily motivated, right? Cyber criminals, they go after you because they want to get money from you, right? That's their biggest thing. How are they going to make money off of attacking you? Nation states is a different thing altogether. They're just looking to take something out. As the FBI director said last week, critical infrastructure is a target for those nation states, one in particular. But those are the things that we need to really consider. You're a target. Did you know that? Right? This is the world that we live in today. So that means that on the cybersecurity side, what are we doing to be more resilient? Because unfortunately, in cybersecurity circles, we don't talk about when you get hit or if you're going to get hit. It's when you're going to get hit. So how do you become resilient? Because everybody's going to get hit eventually at some point in time, right? It's only a matter of time. So how do we become resilient so that your warehouse doesn't stop, your trucks don't stop, you can still unload ships? All that stuff needs to still happen. How do you do it? If you turn everything over to automation and AI and robotics and those things all get knocked out, how do you continue operations? So that'll be part of the...
Yeah, so with whether it's the criminals or the bad actor nation states becoming so sophisticated, I hadn't heard the story about whatever AI mimicking the CEO's voice. That's something. So with all the vulnerabilities that are these bad actors are coming up with, how do we stay abreast of these emerging vulnerabilities? And how do we keep abreast of that stuff? Why don't we start with you, Steve?
Yeah, one of the things that I do is I follow a lot of experts in different industries, but in cybersecurity and risk and things like that in social media. That's a good way to do. Podcasts. Also newsletters. There's a lot of really good newsletters. One of my favorites is put out by SAN, and they actually have all the top cyber news and everything, and then they have 3 or 4 of their experts weigh in on it and give their opinion on how the threat level, how serious it is, and some of the things that they recommend on mitigating that particular thing. And I've been following that probably for 20 years, and just they have a couple different ones, and those are really good. But yeah, just trying to stay on top of things. But yeah, I get all sorts of stuff in email, and I actively seek it out. Subscribe to certain things, and that's really good. Also, training, conferences, going to every time. I usually go to several security conferences a year, and just trying to keep up on top of it, and also with your peers and other people in the industry. I talk to other executives, managers, and saying, "Hey, did you hear about this threat? How did that affect you guys? Or what are you doing to do that. And also, lastly, vendors. Reach out to your vendors. We have a lot of people say, who's your security vendor? It's like, well, I have a lot of vendors, and every one of my vendors, even if it's not security related, I'm asking them how they're doing their security and what are they doing to thwart an active threat. So.
Yep. Don, I know CISA has a lot of good resources. Maybe kind of tell us what CISA has available for us to keep abreast of these.
We got all kinds of really cool stuff. So one of them is we have our alerts. You can go to our website. You can sign up for our alerts. Once you sign up for our alerts, we have alerts that are related to vulnerabilities, and then we have alerts that we may do jointly with the FBI or jointly with other organizations or even jointly with other nations. We have a recent advisory or recommendations that we posted with the UK and the US. So we understand that this is a collaborative effort, right? We're not trying to do it all for ourselves, right? So we work with all the other federal agencies. We work with other governments that are doing the same stuff. Why reinvent the wheel? Why don't we work together and come up with a really good product? So we have a lot of that on our website. You can search our website for all kinds of stuff. You can put in AI, supply chain. You can put in that and you'll get all kinds of articles that we have and resources that you can look at. I recommend that you sign up for ours. I recommend you sign up for the other federal governments. TSA has some, FBI has some. They have alerts that you can sign up for. We also have information sharing and analysis centers that we work with. There's a maritime one if you are connected with the maritime. We have one for transportation. So you can join those information sharing associations, and those organizations will normally have some kind of threat briefing that's a regular basis. We have a threat briefing that you can sign up for if you're in critical infrastructure. And by the way, if you're in logistics, you're in critical infrastructure, you can contact us and we can sign you up for it. It's bi-weekly. Sometimes it's a little technical. We'll tell you about indicators of compromise, what's going on currently, what kind of things you should be looking out for. You have to get put on the list to get on that call. Also, your local state, whatever state you're headquartered out of, they may have a call. I'm from California. Cal OES sends out a morning bulletin that tells us all the stuff that's going on in cybersecurity, over the last 24 hours. We also have fusion centers are across the United States. You can look on our website to find them. All of those fusion centers may also have threat intelligence. They can also connect you to local law enforcement. If you had a ransomware attack, you want to call the FBI and you don't know who to call or whatever, you can call your fusion center and then get you connected to that. Plus any other resources that the state, local, or federal level may have for your organization.
That's great. Joe, go ahead. We talk about transportation and trucking specifically being the target part of the critical infrastructure. I know NMFTA is looking to be a leader in the cybersecurity space. So what are your thoughts on these topics? How do we keep abreast of this stuff?
Yeah, we do the same thing. So, one of the things we do is, we Gartner, that's one of the top things that we follow. We also follow the governmental agencies. And then we also we partner with several things like Auto ISAC. A lot of things that happen within the auto industry bleed over into the transportation industry. And then we also work with some of the universities because we want to find out, and we sponsor research, and then we also do research ourselves. And then we also partner a lot with several people within the transportation space. One of the things that we really look at is within transportation, there's a lot of things out there from an enterprise perspective. But if you think about things from the asset side, the truck side, it's not a lot of focus on it. So we really try to find those individuals, those people that research that, and we try to partner with those folks. Within the last 5 years, it's really much different. When you think about it, we were doing a radio show last week, and the best way to describe it is the truck is an office now. It's got all these. The driver has a tablet. The driver has a phone. The truck itself has all these hot spots. there's all these communication points. And so those are all points of attack. Those are all vulnerabilities. And while a lot of things in the auto industry those things have been exposed, in the trucking industry, those things, they haven't been broadcasted, but we know those are also vulnerabilities. And so, we're partnering, like I said, with a lot of the researchers, getting those things out there, because our mission is really to keep those things safe. And then we're also looking to see, through our partnerships, what type of pen testing can happen on the truck itself. What kind of vulnerabilities are there on the asset? And what can we do to help lock that down? Our mission, our goal is to really help keep that safe and help educate and figure out how do we lock that down? How do we educate? A lot of the education, a lot of the knowledge has been focused on the back office, not as much on the driver. And so, we've been talking to folks about how to isolate that network. Again, open Wi-Fi. It's those trucks pull into the truck stop, they connect to the open Wi-Fi. They just see, man-in-the-middle attacks. They don't know really what they're connecting to. So, we're trying to keep abreast of as much things like that as possible. And we're looking at, through these partnerships, what are things that are happening on the enterprise side that also can impact the trucking side or the supply chain side or the asset side.
Okay. All right, so let's transition a little bit more towards, bad news. We've been breached, we've been hacked. So what can we do? What should we be doing when we do get breached, get hacked? So Don, you want to go first?
Call me before you get hacked, right? So let's go over some things that you could do to prepare yourself and make sure that you're in the best position to respond. Again, like I said, we want to make sure that you're resilient. A lot of folks don't know the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, or I'm going to say CISA from now on, that's a lot shorter. What we do is we collaborate with industry partners. We collaborate with critical infrastructure partners, which would be everybody in this room. We can come in and help by doing assessments. We have a ransomware readiness assessment that we can do. We have my position cybersecurity advisors across the country, even in Guam. So wherever your headquarters is, we can jump on the call with you and we can go over that with you. So we can do an assessment for that. We also have a ransomware readiness assessment guide that we have updated a couple times, and it's done jointly with the FBI and other federal agencies. We have some very specific guidance, and those guidances are really important. So if you don't have a cyber incident response plan, one, that's your first task to do. Second task is make sure that in your run book, if you get hit with ransomware, you follow our first 3 steps, because there's going to be a huge difference between your ability to recover if you don't follow them the way that we have it. Most incident responders will know this, but you may not be on the phone with them before you try to isolate. So the first thing you do, if you get hit, you isolate all the machines, right? Some folks will go in there and isolate it by removing it from the network. That's a good way to do it. The bad way to do it is unplug the power. And why is that bad? Because there may be information resident on memory in that server. And if you shut that power down, that information's gone. That might be the encryption key that they use to encrypt the system. There may be information in there about how they got onto the system, or if they got off of the system and got into another system. That would help your threat hunting. So for your incident response, you want to make sure you follow those guidelines. It's for your own good. Now, most of the time, you're going to call your cyber insurance, and then they're going to send out folks that are just going to be your incident responders, or you already have incident responders on retainer, or you're going to be scrambling around trying to find them. I recommend that you do it before. The federal, Congress passed the thing, CISA, that says that you're going to be reporting to us here very shortly if you had a cyber incident. I recommend you call us then rather than well, you're going to have to call us afterwards, but I'd rather talk to you before, our cybersecurity advisors, to kind of put you in the best position that you can be. We're not regulatory to you guys. We are not law enforcement. We are actually collaborative. We are here to help because we understand that this is a whole of nation approach. And that doesn't mean all of government approach. That means you and I together need to work on this, because when we're talking about nation states attacking, you can't do it alone. And we can't do it for you. We got to do it together, right? And so we really are trying to collaborate. And we actually have the information. If you share information with us, we consider it protected critical infrastructure information. It exempts it from FOIA, it exempts it from regulatory uses, it exempts it from disclosure laws, and it exempts it from civil litigation. So sharing it with us does not mean that it's going to turn out bad for you. So your attorneys will need to understand that, but we have the paperwork for it and all that stuff. But that's what I can't speak enough. Let's collaborate in advance. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I spent 2 years at the US DOT, so I think I can say this without being offensive. I'm the government, I'm here to help. And that really is true. Joe and I had a conversation today with the CTO and the CIO of one of the largest fleets in the country. And when we told them that somebody from CISA, Donald, was going to be on the panel, they said, oh, they came out and did a pen test on our fleet. And they said it was very, very valuable. So what's that's worth? That's great.
Yeah, well, I like to say that we're a 4-letter agency, not a 3-letter agency, right? That's a big difference, right? NASA's cool. Everybody likes NASA, 4 letters. CISA, we're cool.
Joe, what are your thoughts on what should we be doing if we've been breached, if we've been hacked?
Say again, please.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on what should organizations be doing if they've been breached? Anything else you have to add other than what Don just covered?
I mean, the first thing is be prepared. Not only communicate, but be prepared. Have a business continuity plan. If you go walk through the exhibit hall, there's tons of technology, and technology is great. And the further we get along, the more technology based we're going to be. But you have to have a plan for if you do get hacked, how you're going to run your business. And so I have that business continuity plan. And like you mentioned earlier, how long can you be down? How long do you have to go to your backups? Then the other thing to me is communication. Communicate, because a lot of people in the industry, they share the same technology. So, a couple months ago, there was a major carrier that got hacked. It was ransomware. And I know it was an LTL carrier, and a lot of the carriers in the space were very concerned. They're like, what got hacked? Am I using it? Am I going to be exposed? What do I have to do? And this particular carrier was down for a few weeks. And this carrier did a great job. They came out and they communicated and they said, this is what happened. You're not at risk. It was something proprietary. But, not all carriers are doing that. So I think when you get hacked, definitely reach out to the governmental agencies, but also reach out and communicate and be prepared. Have your business continuity plan. Like you mentioned earlier, it's not if you get hacked. It's when you get hacked. Make sure you're prepared, you have your business continuity plan, and you execute it. It's just like, I think of it as a power outage. Every data center has a UPS. Everybody knows, hey, when the power goes out, this is what we're going to do. It's almost like when we started to prepare for COVID. What's our plan? What are we going to do? We all went to work together to figure out what our plan was with COVID. That's really what a hack is. It's a virus coming in that we got to have a business continuity plan. We got to prepare for, but we have to communicate. It's one of those things that if you're not prepared, it's just going to become worse and worse.
I'm going to take the question that's on the screen now as we're winding down. There's about 6 minutes left. So the question is, do you foresee a regulation on internet domain registries that will prevent issuing lookalike domains? Anybody have any insight? Would you perhaps, Don, have any insight on that?
I have no insight on that. I don't work for an agency that does regulations, so and the other ones don't talk to me and tell me that stuff. So,
any of you folks?
I think it would be really helpful because a lot of times what we do is we buy a lot of domains that are obviously similar, or common misspellings. And, but there's just so many different ways to do it that this would be a great way to, there are, I think it's KnowBe4 has a utility where you can enter your domain and they will actually give you a report of everyone that has a domain that's similar to yours and are using it for mail, web. We do that all the time, and you would be very surprised what comes up.
Yeah, that's a good, that one actually did find the load board. Because we asked, when we had a member that reached out to us, because there's a member that got impacted but when the load board got hacked, or when the load board lookalike came in. And we asked, hey, what happened? What do you guys know about this? And the lookalike domain was actually stood up about 4 weeks before it happened. And again, it was a Russian user, and the Russian user contacted another Russian place that created the actual lookalike domain. So they had 4 weeks to react. And so, if this particular place would have had something in place that would have looked for that, it could have been stopped. But it's a great idea to have a regulation or to have some sort of checks and balances when you go to register to say, hey, is there something like that? That goes way back in time. I used to be a school teacher, and I can tell you I used to teach history. And I don't know how many times I had to tell students, this dates me, don't go to whitehouse.com, it's whitehouse.gov. And it was one of the first lookalike domains I can remember to get people to go to that site.
I would recommend too, if you have that incident where you have a lookalike domain to yours, there's a lot of different ways that they can do it. They can use Cyrillic letters that aren't the same as our letters, so it looks like an A, but it's not an A, right? So I definitely recommend you report to FBI. So go to ic3.gov and report that. That goes into the crime statistics. That gets then reported back to Congress. They, put funding together to deal with these issues. So even if it's something small like that and you don't think it's a big deal, it is a big deal. And if everybody reports it, then we know how big of a problem it is, right? And then we can take actions, or the government would be aware, whether the FBI needs to, bolster something, or regulations need to be done, but we have to have that data. So definitely share data with us.
That's great. We're down to just under 3 minutes, so maybe a minute from each of you. So we talked about, what do you do when you're breached? But what are your thoughts on what sort of investments should we be making, whether as an organization or the government, to make sure we're prepared for the future of these emerging threats? Any insight on that? I'll start with you.
So I'm going to put my auditor hat on and say, this is enterprise risk. You need to spend as much to mitigate risk to an acceptable level. I mean, that's the right answer, right? That's going to be different for everybody. What we find usually is there's not spending enough on cybersecurity. They're not addressing the cyber risks. So I think we need to do our homework there to make sure that we're spending the money appropriately and to mitigate the risk to an acceptable level.
For us, I would say having a regular pen test, that was a big thing. We got a lot of, and don't go for the cheap. You don't want to try to go discount shopping for a pen tester, because you'll get a 15-year-old kid running scripts. But we had a really reputable company that was recommended by our attorneys, because they'd actually used them for different court type cases and stuff. But they were really good, and they explained everything they were doing, and they do a combination of actively hacking, scripts, and then they explained everything, gave us an executive report, and it basically gave us a checklist of all the things we needed to do in our domain to make it safer. Also, cybersecurity insurance. That was a big thing too. They gave us a huge list of things that we needed to do, MFA for logins, and they also give you a forensics breach coach. So when a ransomware attacks, we have that in our incident response plan. We're calling them first, and then the FBI.
Yeah, for me, it's take it seriously. A lot of companies think, oh, this isn't going to happen to me. I'm not going to be targeted. I'm not big enough, or hey, that's somebody else's problem. I think, I talked to a small carrier one time and they're like, that's an OEM issue. That's not my issue. It's everybody's issue. Everybody has to take this seriously. Everybody has to focus on this. And, it takes a village. And if you don't take it seriously, if you don't invest in it, the problem as we become more digital and as we move faster, as AI continues to make our life easier, we've got to take it serious. And sometimes with technology, it can make us lazy. We don't want to do that two-step authentication. We don't want to do the complicated passwords. Slow down, take it seriously, because if not, it's going to come back and it's going to slow us down.
Yep. Yeah, I'd say seems like preparation, communication are key for all of us collectively to try to fix this problem and make sure we're hardening the target, as they say. Well, we've wrapped up the 35 minutes. Thank you very much for joining us for this conversation. Whatever's next for you, gambling, whatever. Enjoy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.